Good morning, everybody. I hear amazing conversations already happening. The multiplier effect is in effect. I thought maybe we could just do a quick hello and good morning. So if you would just stand up. Come on, stand up. This may be evidence that we need more coffee. Okay, and just repeat after me. Aloha! More. Aloha! All right, that is just a welcome of the morning to bring you into spirit with everyone else. We are here as one family of people who are committed to building a better democracy, to building an inclusive democracy. Look to your right, look to your left. These are your neighbors, your compatriots, your champions, people who are heroes in this space. So thank each other for all of that service. I was given 7 little bullet points and told to speak for 7 minutes. So well, let's see how that works. I wanted to start a little bit by talking about my own journey to working in the space of redistricting. Before I came to Common Cause, maybe I should say my name. My name is Kathy Fung. I'm the Vice President of Programs at Common Cause. And before I came to Common Cause, I worked at an organization that organized Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders to participate in the redistricting process in California. And we were pretty proud of ourselves because we had organized in Northern and Southern California and gone up and down the state and brought people together around tables just like this. And in those days, we didn't have a lot of fancy laptops that we could afford. So it was big pieces of paper that had maps on them. And we talked about where communities of interest were and what places people have built centers and how did they gather and what was important to them. And the proudest moment was when we put together a whole statewide map, which I'm sure many of you realize how hard that is, that not only took into account the testimony and the sharing that was happening from the Asian and Pacific Islander communities, but working with the Latino community and African American community, we built a unity map for the first time. And I thought, as a young attorney, okay, great, next step. Let's work on testimony. Let's make sure people have a chance to testify before the commission that's drawing the lines. And at the time, it was a joint Senate and Assembly committee of legislators. And we brought Filipino American veterans who talked about marching through the death march of Bataan on the promise of citizenship here in the US, building a life here once they came, in many different places, but finding places of gathering, whether that was the Union Church in Filipino town or finding foods that they could bring over that recreated where they came from. And that was so important to hear, so important to tell. Sometimes I remember that the Assembly Chairman Longbill, as he heard this testimony, he had tears in his eyes. And I thought, I think we've done it. We've organized, we've been heard, this is what we need. Only to find out that after 4 months of public hearings, those committees went behind closed doors and drew the maps that they really needed to. And over the next week and a half, the lines that were being drawn, we would hear rumors, murmurs about what was happening. Negotiations where somebody would say, there's an Asian American candidate who might be running against me. I need to make sure that that community is cut out. I got a phone call from an assemblywoman who I was thrilled to death from San Francisco. I thought, wow, San Francisco, 1 in 3 Asian Americans. We've got some ideas about how we can make sure that those communities are held together. She called me up and she said, Kathy, you're not gonna put another fucking Asian in my district.
Whoa!
2001, that's not so long ago. And the arrogance and the privilege that comes from this idea that the district belonged to her, and in a city where every 1 in 3 is an Asian American, you can't move a line without accidentally bringing somebody in. But she told me, you're not going to do that. It was one of the first wake-up calls. Second one was when good friends of ours at MALDEF brought a lawsuit. And they had a legislator who had been inside the room where all the negotiating was happening, willing to testify about what happened behind those closed doors, willing to say that, yes, actually, there was a lot of horse trading going on. And some people were saying, I need to reduce the Latino population because, I want to be sure that I have a safe district. And willing to put on record the smoking gun that you need to show intentional discrimination and discrimination. And the court in that case said, you know what? There's a little thing called legislative privilege. Oh, who here in this room knows about legislative privilege and has run up against it? Yeah. And so after that whole experience, had some wins, had a lot of losses, but had a lot of soul searching about whether this was the right way to go, whether this redistricting process that was run by legislators, where good people took time out of their schedules, whether it was work or taking care of their children or traveling far distances to tell their stories, only to be told that none of that input mattered because the decisions were going to be made behind closed doors to service the incumbents. And so in the conversation, we talked about what was possible. And we looked at Arizona, and we looked at Washington, and we looked at some other states that had some kind of commission process. And we brought folks who had worked in those spaces to ask them what worked and what didn't work. And at first we thought we just wanted something small. We just want some rules about transparency. Just make sure that, the legislature, when they're meeting, that they actually meet not behind closed doors, but in public. How many of you have experienced legislatures that make all their decisions behind closed doors? Raise your hand. Oh, a lot more hands. So I think as time grew and we built a coalition and we had conversations with unlikely bedfellows and Common Cause, I'm reaching out to the Chamber of Commerce and I'm talking to the Manufacturers Association, but I'm also talking to NAACP and League of Women Voters, and we're bringing in AARP, which had never thought about this issue. We brought all of these allies together to say, we all know that this is broken. What can we do to fix it? And eventually, out of that conversation, we started to shape something that was bold, something that wasn't just make them meet publicly, because we knew that they would just suspend those rules in a heartbeat. We actually started talking about what would it look like if we had a community-centered redistricting process, one that centers the people, not the politicians. Now that slogan didn't come until a little later, but it was definitely something that permeated all the work that we did. And what we ultimately were able to do, I'll skip forward, is after many, many years of working with the legislature, hoping that they were going to put something on the ballot. How many of you have tried working with the legislature to get something referred to the ballot? Yeah, Oregon, New York, Arizona, I think Ohio was here. We've all experienced that. And it's hard because you want to believe that some of the people who are champions of the issues that you care about are going to stand with you when it matters. But we've seen in state after state, legislators, in the end, as you get closer and closer to the cycle of redistricting, it's self-interest that dominates, it's partisan interest that dominates over the people's interest, no matter where they might have been standing on any other issue. And so what we realized was, as we had negotiated, after many years, by 2007, I had watched the last time of a piece of legislation move through, disappear into the legislature, essentially have Lucy pull the football from Charlie Brown. And I said, we got to stop this insanity. We've been doing enough research. We've talked enough about what the language should look like. We've built out the unusual coalition. Let's just go for it. So in 2007, we started crafting language that was going to get onto the ballot. And at the time, we had $30,000 in the bank for a campaign. Who's ever started a campaign with $30,000? Now, yes, Oregon, I know your pain. Um, Luckily, at the time, we were also talking to, because we had such a large coalition, we had been talking to then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was intrigued by the idea, right? He had been hitting a real wall when it came to kind of obstinance within the legislature, both from his own party and from the opposition. Sometimes he was finding more opposition from his own party. And so what he wanted to do was to push for something that he thought was fair and square. And he said, you know, you guys have put together this crazy coalition that even I wasn't able to. Let's do this. And so we worked together with Governor Schwarzenegger, which lifted the profile. Because back then, in 2008, when we first went on the ballot, all of our communications people who did tests and polling and whatnot said, whatever you do, whenever you talk about this, don't use the word redistricting because nobody knows what it is. And gerrymandering's even harder. Now, here's what gives me hope. We did, by the way, we passed. So everybody who's California commissioner, raise your hands. Thank you, past and present, for your service. And anybody who is served in California as a local commissioner, raise your hand, because you are the additional progeny of all of that hard work. But here's what happened. Over the course of California passing it by initiative, then we had more and more conversations, right? That multiplier effect, where we had conversations with Michigan and Colorado and Ohio and New Mexico. And all of those were possibilities that started to become ones where they said, okay, it's worked in that state. We could try. We're going to learn from your best lessons and improve on that model and try something in our state. Right? And so by 2018, 5 states had adopted some kind of redistricting reform. Colorado, Utah, Missouri, anybody else? Michigan, last one, Ohio. Now, Ohio, I know you all are like, but does that count? It counts, it counts. It's hard in a state like Ohio to pass something. And that reform ultimately then built, I think, not just campaigns in those states, but a national conversation around redistricting. And that national conversation is where now when you get into a Lyft or an Uber, or you talk to the guy at the print shop, or you talk to your next door neighbor, they actually start the conversation with, oh, redistricting, I know all about that. Tell me what's going on, right? You all are ambassadors of redistricting reform. Now, what I want to do is just be sure that I am recognizing that today we have commissioners from around the country. And last night we gave a quick shout out, and I'm hoping I'm not missing anybody, but I know that we have California, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Michigan, New Jersey, Utah. Raise your hands if I missed you. Texas, Indiana. So there's a lot of places that are having these conversations. We're also having a lot of activists who are pushing for these reforms in their states. New York, Arizona, Oregon, Minnesota, Nebraska, Ohio, right? These are the conversations that we're trying to stimulate. So I want to thank everybody who's come here today, particularly on behalf of Patricia. She wanted me to say thank you to the commissioners, because most of you are not paid to be here. And many of you paid for your travel costs. This is a commitment that you've made to this cause that goes beyond a job. It goes beyond a stipend. It is a passion. And so thank you for coming. I also want to thank all of the sponsors, because this would not be possible. The scholarships, the food, everything else would not be possible without this help. So thank you to Haystack DNA. Raise your hand. Here you are. Everybody go talk to Andrew if you need anything. Redistricting Partners, California Endowment, whose space we're in today, Data Viewpoint, and Redistricting Data Hub. Raise your hands. Data Hub, Redistricting Partners. Okay. All right. Some of these are folks who I think you'll want to meet throughout the day, and they'll be speaking on various panels, because they're really, sometimes we need to build the infrastructure, to support the good work that we've done. Because in a lot of ways, once we built the commission, the hardest thing was, oh, wait, all of the people who usually do the mapping and the data analysis, up until then, they'd only worked for partisan entities. So creating a body of people who come from academia, who come from other spaces, who are committed to this idea of reaching out and building a more inclusive democracy, that's a very different breed of person. But now we have a couple of generations under our belt of people who are building these very things. I'm looking at you, Moon. So I just want to thank you all for also contributing to this part of the community. Lastly, I want to be sure that I introduce the person who came up with this amazing idea of bringing together everybody, particularly commissioners, into a space to share our ideas and to teach the next generation. Please join me in welcoming Patricia Sine.
Sorry, I'm just a little taller than Kathy. Good morning, everybody. How are you all feeling? Good morning, everybody on Zoom, especially my colleague and good friend, Neil. Everyone on the California Commission, turn over that way and wave to Neil. Anyway, I am Patricia Sinai, and some of you have interviewed already. As soon as 2020 ended, really 2021 ended, I was like, okay, so how are we gonna do this better in 2030? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? We're tired. And the truth was, our commission people keep saying, how come you guys keep meeting? And our commission was like all jazz talk parts of us. We're really excited to talk about 2030. Oh, there you are, Sarah. And the reason is, we as commissioners really, it was, served an honorable position, and it was an honor. I mean, it was COVID, and a lot of people, we didn't get to travel a lot. We didn't get to be called commissioner a lot from in person and stuff. And none of that really mattered to us. I remember a former commissioner coming to one of our meetings saying, well, you guys are nobodies now, the maps are in. And I'm like, we were somebody before? I was like, well, I don't know. They would tell you how many people are watching on Zoom. You're like, whoa, okay, people are watching us. But the truth was, we were given, we were selected, and it was a real privilege to be in the middle of democracy and participatory democracy. And even though it was on Zoom or there was all different ways, it was, I mean, at the end of the day, we had one night, we ended at 2 a.m, and it was just public calls and stuff. And we knew voices by the end. I've gone to conferences and someone will speak and I'll go up to them and go, excuse me, did you call into the California, Citizen Redistricting Commission? Like, yes, and you heard me. And I'm like, you know who I am? They're like, yeah, you're a little box on Zoom. I know who you are. And so it was transparent. I mean, that to me proves it was transparent, that I could recognize someone's voice and that they recognized my face and that knew that we had heard them and talked about them. So I want to thank all of you. My why, so I was, in 3rd grade, and I came running home to my mom and I said, Mommy, 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 I know what I want to be when I grow up. And I was so excited. And she's like, okay, Patricia, what is it this time? And I said, Mommy, I'm going to be the first woman president of the United States. And my mom kind of smirked and she's like, do I tell her or do I not tell her? And finally she's like, Mija, you can't. Aww. Mom, it doesn't matter that I'm a girl. My teacher said I could do anything I want to do, and this is what I'm going to be. And she's like, sorry, sweetie, there's rules. And you were born in Mexico. And in the United States, you have to be born in the United States to be a president. And I said, okay. And she's like, and you can't be president in Mexico. Because in Mexico, your mother and your father need to be born in Mexico. And my parents, one was born in Peru and one was born in Argentina. So when my dad came home, I'm heartbroken. I'm like, Puppy, 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 I can't be president of the United States or Mexico or anywhere. And he's like, Mija, I understand. I grew up, I was born in in Argentina, My mom was born in Argentina. My dad was born in Argentina. My grandfather was, immigrated there when he was a child. And I can't be president. I could never be president of Argentina because in the Constitution, it says only Catholics. And he was Jewish.
Whoa.
And that was a rude awakening for a third grader that democracy is not perfect. And you've got to find the ways to make it more perfect. You've got to find your niche. And democracy only works if we're all engaged and we're all speaking up and we find that niche. So that's my why. And I hope you all share your whys because sometimes we have to go back to our whys. Now we're not there, but there were times in those long meetings that I was like, my why, why am I here? Why? And so I just want to remind everybody of that. So people have asked for the agenda. We tried to make it paperless and then we were laughing yesterday because we were making tons of copies. But anyway, you can find the agenda on using the barcode or you have your own website today. So if you go to commoncause.org/commission, you'll find everything there. The barcodes are also on your, at your tables. So we put them in the little table tents. So you should be able to find them there. And we'll try to stay on time as much as possible. The way this all started, as Kathy said, Russell and I were really excited to keep talking about redistricting and talk about 2030. We started our own little subcommittee on the commission. And we're like, wouldn't this be great? Well, let's talk to Common Cause and see if they'll do this with us. And Kathy was like, yes. And Dan was like, uh-huh. And Dan's still like, uh-huh. Kathy's been promoted since then. If you all don't know, she's a vice president now of the organization, a vice president of programs, very well deserved. And Kathy, I love how Russell always calls Kathy our godmom. And she really is the godmother of all of us who care about independent redistricting. So thank you, Kathy. And so you can find the agenda, the panelist bios. We'll have a final survey on there. And you all sent in resources. So there's a lot of different resources, reports you've all written and things like that. That's all going to be in one place. For the first time, maybe ever, we have all redistricting stuff in one, all reports, because I'm constantly looking for different states reports and stuff. So I'm very excited about that. We wanted to create some group norms. Okay, me, anyone who was on the California Commission knows it's me. And group norms work well, just so that we all kind of know what to expect. The first, before we go into the group norms, just a quick thing about the agenda. Morning, we're talking about 220. Afternoon, redistricting 2020, not 220, but 2020. And then in the afternoon, we're switching and talking about the future. So we're going to be imagining what could be better, what could, and just start thinking in that way. The lunch and reception is really your networking time. We've made sure not to have speakers on purpose. And then in the afternoon, there's going to be a session when we're talking about the future, where we've kind of left one panel, anyone can create their own breakout group. And that breakout group will be in here. And it can be talking about anything you want to talk about 2030, like what would the roadmap look? And if it's not on one of the topics that we've selected, feel free to talk with your colleagues at lunch and stuff and start getting a group of people who want to talk about your idea, whatever it may be. The agreements, before I start, can all who are able stand up again? We're just making sure you guys haven't fallen asleep yet. Now, all of you who participated in redistricting in any form, raise your hand. All right. Now, those who did not serve on an independent redistricting commission, committee, advisory council, whatever else they might call it, please sit down. Okay, those of you who are standing, today we are calling commissioners. Yes, you're a commissioner. Don't sit down yet. Those of you who are sitting are advocates. So when we say commissioner and advocate, and you're like, I'm an academic, you're an advocate today. And we're just trying to keep it set. Can we also clap for all these people who are standing? And all those of you who are on Zoom, have a seat. Thank you. We just are trying to keep things simple. We will be calling them commissions. We know they have different titles. We will sometimes be saying independent redistricting commissions, IRCs. You know, there's, you know, if you don't know a name or a term, raise your hand, even if it's in the big group. We're all here. One of our agreements is we're all here as learners and as experts. No one here knows more than the other person. We just know different things. And so then let's learn from each other. Everyone's perspective is important, and it's their own perspective. So you are presenting as you. None of us are representing our commissions, our state, or anything else. You're just telling your truth. And as you're telling your truth, stick to your truth. Don't try to say, well, this other commissioner said this, or this other state. Just tell your story and what you know, what your truth is. So that's speaker experience. It's okay to disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. We know that, but it's always good to remind each other. And we want to maximize learning today. So mix it up. We ask you to sit at tables that are other people you know, especially from your commission or your state, are not sitting at. We've tried to create as many opportunities for you all to mix. You all know your own laws, what laws are guiding your commission, how many of you can be sitting together, how many, all that stuff. But that's not why we're doing this. We're doing this to maximize the learning again. And share and encourage others. We are a group of people. A lot of our facilitators that I was working with them said, well, what if I can't get them to talk? And I started laughing. Like, this group talks. Commissioners like to talk. They like to talk about their experience. This is our support group day. But if you're doing all the talking and you're getting tired of hearing yourself, guess what? We're tired of you too. So just take a step back, roll back, allow someone else to speak. And then confidentiality. We are going to try to bring together as many of the recommendations, a lot of the thoughts that you all have together in a very short report. We're hoping 10 pages. And Andrew just looked up like, really, 10? And so we will be asking for you all to fill out worksheets and to share your thoughts. And if you're on Zoom, you will have surveys. We'll be collecting all that information, but we won't be attributing it to anybody or to any state. Be yourself and know. And we also ask you that when you go out of this room, you can share the ideas that were shared, but not say, oh, you know what Patricia Sinai from California said? Let me tell you. No, that's not okay today. And I think that's all. With that, I'm going to introduce my colleague in crime for putting on this conference, Will, and he is going to have fun with you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Will Brott. I am the legal fellow with the redistricting team at Common Cause. Thank you for being here. So we're going to do a bit of a speed run. The question is, are these districts fair or are they gerrymandered? So get those hands ready. So this first one. How many think it's gerrymandered? Don't be shy. Don't hide, you know. Okay. You would be correct. This is just outside Dallas. This is Texas 32. You can see in the middle, that little narrowly carved out space. This is a classic form of packing that has occurred here. What about this? There. This is Staten Island, okay? The little arm that reaches up into Brooklyn over there. This is a fair map. However, the proposed map in New York moves that little top right bit up a little bit. That's a 20-point swing. Just a tiny, tiny bit, just a few miles. How about this? This is not gerrymandered. This is the Illinois 4. This is the classic earmuffs district, which was a VRA district for the growing Latino population. So it's not always about shape. How about this? We think this is fair? This is one of the most egregiously gerrymandered districts that we found. So the little arm on the left, That's Nashville. It gets cannibalized into 3 different districts. All it takes is that one little arm. How about this? Some of you may know what this is. Correct. So this is California. This is the 20th through the 22nd. We have 2 vote VRA districts. And then the big one is actually Kevin McCarthy's district. So yeah, it's shape can be misleading. And we know that you put a lot of great effort and care into creating your districts to make sure that people are represented fairly. Thank you so much. I'd like to welcome Dan Vicuña to the stage, and we'll get our first panel started.